Self-help books. Love them, hate them, they are inescapable.
I've read over 400 books that all claim to change your life.
This book, truly, it will free you, okay?
These books, they just did something to my brain.
It will rid you of your anxiety.
Now, for someone with ADHD, self-help advice can often feel like someone telling you to just do it. At its best, it's not helpful. At its worst, it can lead to you feeling incompetent and burning out. So today, I am going to review the most popular self-help books of all time to see if the sworn by advice in them is any good for someone with ADHD. So let's start with the worst offender. Rich Dad Poor Dad is a finance advice book that was released in 1997 and has broken records again and again. The premise of the book is simple. Stop trading your time for income and start buying assets rather than liabilities, like the rich dad in the story. People with ADHD are overrepresented in the entrepreneur and freelance category, and that's because we don't necessarily fit into the work culture or a 9-to-5. And this comes with financial instability, so we should be the prime audience for such financial advice. Except, I don't think this book actually has any. I think this book can help no one. After reading it, I was very surprised to see that it has overwhelmingly positive reviews, and maybe I'm not getting something, but the premise of the book really boils down to just one sentence: buy assets, not liabilities. That's stretched across a whole book, and even that idea is kind of shaky. The author calls a house a liability, when in reality, though you might have a lot of costs associated with housing, a house is still an asset. And then there's also the problem of the author himself. The man has had not one, but 2 bankruptcies. There are also long-standing allegations that parts of the book were stolen from another author, so I don't really know where this whole delusion has come from that this book is any good. I feel like we've all gaslit each other into thinking that this is in any way helpful. So, no, I don't think this book is any good for anyone with ADHD, because I don't think this book is any good for anyone. I might not be particularly impressed with the financial advice that I have not learned in this video. However, our next book does in fact have some solid advice. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck was published in 2016 and has since then been on the bestsellers list and been a generally really popular book I've seen all over the place. The main premise of the book is to stop focusing on things that don't matter and focus only on your core values and things that you really do care about. This will help bring your stress levels down and you'll emerge a much stronger person. Now, in my mind, this immediately aims at the RSD side of my brain, which almost everyone with ADHD has. So on paper, this book should be really helpful. I just don't feel like I got much from it. It's full of swearing, which is just for the stylistics and becomes kind of distracting rather than edgy. While I feel like it did give me a bit more energy while I was reading it, there wasn't anything that really stuck with me long term. The advice itself isn't wrong. Stop caring about things that aren't important to you, don't fall into a victim mindset, and stop stressing over minor things. These are all generally really good principles, but for someone who struggles with RSD and general ADHD thought mush, where you can't fully control what you're ruminating on, the just don't give a fuck kind of mentality isn't really a system for getting better. It's more of a mood that the author tries to present to you. On a small side note, Mark Manson, the author of the book, does have a really good YouTube channel where he gives a lot of very good advice, and I recommend you check it out. I think this book was clearly very successful for its target audience. I just don't know if I'm necessarily it. As someone who doesn't read many books, I felt like this book was too mainstream for me. I think the next book does a much better job of highlighting the mindset change that I feel like Mark Manson was trying to get at, and it's Atomic Habits. The main premise of the book is that small 1% daily habits compound over time into massive life change, for better or for worse. Now, for someone with ADHD, having daily habits is basically impossible. The beginning of the book discusses how important daily habits are, and that stressed me out a little bit, I'm not gonna lie. I felt a little bit of FOMO. The author then goes on to outline a few methods by which you can build up these habits, some of which I do believe are quite useful. This is generally the most mixed book on this list. I'd say the parts of it that aren't as helpful are only unhelpful because someone with ADHD would struggle to build daily habits, whereas someone who doesn't have ADHD might not. The author outlines 3 layers of change, which are outcomes, process, and identity. The identity layer is especially useful for someone with ADHD and I feel like is a really good way of improving your life. Even if you think of yourself as someone who has their shit together for a small period of time, you might actually get there. And that's honestly the truth behind any self-help book. Reading them can make you feel like someone who's working on themselves and who's like getting somewhere, and that in itself can be helpful no matter how bad or good the book is. And sometimes that alone can be worth dedicating your time to reading a book. The cue, crave, response, reward cycle also was something that stuck out to me. God, that's a tongue twister. Leaving things out where I can see them is something that makes my brain not forget that they exist. I think a lot of ADHDers are accused of being messy for this reason, because if you put something away, you're gonna forget about it forever. And the book kind of goes into how this works. The same goes for the section of the book that discusses how to build habits by making the thing you want to do obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. I think these are all things that are also doable for someone with ADHD. Obviously, finding ways to make tasks more interesting, more enjoyable, is going to work for everyone, especially for someone who craves dopamine. Where it really falls apart for me, however, is the habit stacking. Some of the chapters discuss compounding your routine, so once you do one habit, you then do another one, and kind of interweaving them together, if that makes sense. In practice, for someone with ADHD, that's basically impossible long term. I already barely do a single habit reliably every day. If then other habits rely on that habit, it's over. I think habit stacking really assumes consistency, which ADHDers just don't really have. The next book on this list actually doesn't have anything that I'd say someone with ADHD would struggle with. But I don't know if that makes it much better than Atomic Habits. How to Make Friends and Influence People has been a classic since its publishing in 1937. The book is the oldest on this list, and it basically kickstarted the whole self-help genre. I believe part of that long-term success is because the advice in it is universal. You'd expect it to have aged badly since people didn't really have a solid understanding of ADHD back then. However, I'd say it's one of the most ADHD-friendly books on this list. The premise of the book is very simple. The book gives specific advice on how to be more likable and influence people through conversation. Remembering names, showing genuine interest, and letting people talk about themselves are some of the main pieces of advice in this book. Struggling to make friends actually came up on my ADHD assessment, which surprised me at the time, but is actually a really common issue. There's very little that can actually trip up an ADHD in this book, aside from forgetting what you're trying to do in the conversation, maybe. But that's largely because Dale Carnegie doesn't touch on the more holistic side of socializing, which is what ADHDers struggle with. Things like forgetting to text people back, but, you know, obviously they didn't have texting back then, but you know. He's more focused on the specifics of how to say things, when to say things, what to say, and not exactly on maintaining friendships long term. But within the scope of the book, it genuinely holds up. The structure is a little bit repetitive, it's just a little bit predictable. I've started reading his other book and it's pretty similar to that, where it offers a piece of advice and then gives examples of it being used. I was recently reminded of this book because I was watching Young Sheldon. They made fun of the say the person's name advice from it. But aside from that, the rest of the book genuinely holds up. And none of it requires the kind of sustained consistency that might trip up ADHD brains on following advice from other books on this list. So I can genuinely recommend this book if you're looking to improve your social skills a little bit. I think the next book you guys might disagree with me on, but out of all of these books, I think this one is the one that resulted in the biggest changes in my life, and that is The Magic of Tidying by Marie Kondo. And the reason I think this book is quite helpful for someone with ADHD, the main premise is that You kind of get involved in this big clear out once, and then after it's done, which I feel like sounds very appealing to someone with ADHD. Every other book asks you to maintain something every single day, such as a habit, a mindset, or a routine. This one, while it does have elements of that, my concluding thoughts are, I think Atomic Habits is the most knowledge saturated book on this list. Opinions down in the comments below, and I will try to reply to all of them. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.